Welcome, everybody. Let's jump right into this Song of Solomon. I invite you to turn there with me if you brought a Bible. If not, grab one of the red ones under a chair, and you're gonna find your place on page 470 of those. We've been through 2 weeks of Song of Solomon of an 8-chapter book, and now we're going to be in chapter 5. The first Sunday, we talked about dating and what attracts us to each other, and last week we had the talk and we talked about sex. God gave us this book because He created our bodies and gave us this thing, this passionate thing called love and romance and sexual desires. But Song of Solomon in chapter 8 describes this thing as just like a blazing fire. Look at what it says. Love burns like blazing fire, like a mighty flame. Many waters cannot quench love. Rivers cannot sweep it away. In other words, this thing called love, you can't control it. You can't contain it. And so God says, I want to give you something that is so passionate and raging. It will consume you. Therefore, be careful with it because you don't want to carry a torch around a dry field. Otherwise, things are going to get out of control. And so, many times in the Song of Solomon, it says, do not arouse this love before the appropriate time, because if you do, you will get burned by it. And I recognize that many of us are in this room here today with second and third degree burns from this thing called love and romance, because honestly, we mishandled it. And we took it to places it wasn't meant to belong, and so we're hurting the consequences because of that. So thank God He gave us a book just dedicated to sex and romance to say, sons and daughters, I gave you this gift, now let me show you how to use it. It's like getting a little gremlin and saying, with much what the gremlin say? It's also in the Bible. With much power comes great responsibility. Like you don't get them wet, don't feed them after midnight. Like God says, all right, this thing called love, you don't want it to come back and bite you. So I'm going to give you a book to show you how to date right, how to have sex right, how to be married right. And today we're looking at a chapter where he shows us how to fight right. How many of you have learned in marriage that yes, you do have fights occasionally? How many have ever had a marriage fight among you? Come on, right? How many of you have one this morning, like right now as we speak? We're fighting right now. I'm ticked off. That happens. Seems to happen on Sunday. All couples fight. Let me just destroy that lie of the devil to make you think that your marriage is extra bad because you two are fighting or something like that. Listen, this is God's design and intention to bring you two together to squeeze some of this junk out of you, because He doesn't stop with saving us. He wants to heal us. And so He's got to bring that stuff to the surface so we can deal with it. And what better way than with your spouse? God knows sooner or later your spouse is going to punch those right buttons, and that stuff's going to come out. And so yes, it's normal to fight, but we damage ourselves when we don't fight right. And there's I want to call two conditions of marriage that I think aren't really based in reality. The first stage of marriage is known as the honeymoon stage. This is when maybe you're newlyweds or you're just kind of getting to know each other, and you are totally deceived to think that your spouse is absolutely perfect. Like they can do nothing wrong. Like it's nice and innocent and cute, but it's stupid, all right? Like you first get married and they leave their socks on the floor. You're like, oh, isn't that cute, leaving the socks on the floor? Just give it some time, all right? Just give it a little time. Did you pick up your socks for once? I mean, some of those things are just going to stay cute after a while, and you start realizing, how many of you have realized your spouse, your husband, your wife is not perfect? How many of you realize that you remind them all the time, no, you're not perfect? Sooner or later, reality is going to catch up with you, and their shortcomings, their weaknesses, their faults are going to be exposed to you. Your blinders are going to come off. Well, however, if we're not careful, we will find ourselves in what I would call a wounded marriage, a painful, hurting marriage. And that is when you've left the honeymoon stage and some of these weaknesses are now exposed. You don't respond appropriately and it leads to pain. And some of you here today are in marriages that are sick. Some of you have left marriages that just broke apart because of this. And you are hurting. You're disappointed in each other. I will say the thing that is a cancer in marriage is this thing called resentment, where you really start despising something about the other person. They've let you down time and time again. They don't treat you the way you wanted to be treated, and resentment begins to build inside of you. And this is a wounded marriage, and this is a dangerous place to be. Why do we get there? Well, I think we lose sight of what marriage is really about. My wife and I had this discussion this week, and honestly, it was a little painful discussion. Because Jesus makes a statement when he was asked what marriage will be like in heaven, and Jesus says you won't be. Jesus says you will not be given to marriage in heaven. And for some of you who are in an abusive, loveless, painful marriage, some of you are like, glory, glory. But if you're in a good marriage, in a honeymoon stage of marriage, you love your marriage, that can be a painful thought to say, we're not going to be together. No, it is until death do us part. When we get into glory, we will not be given to marriage. And the fact that that can be a painful thought really says to me that we can't even begin to imagine what that glory is going to be like. In fact, Romans tells us you can't even conceive the glory that is going to be revealed in us. And there will be no lack. There'll be no longing. You won't be missing anything. And if we really understood it, you would realize that you will actually be closer together as a couple than you are here on earth. So you're not going to miss being married. Now, what it will be like, it's hard for us to imagine, but there will be no more need for this thing called marriage. So that means marriage is just for this time on earth for certain people, not everyone. And it carries with it a very specific purpose, and that purpose is to represent God's love for us in marriage form, to give Him glory. And I'm afraid what happens is we go through the honeymoon stage and it feels so right and it feels so good that we turn a little inward in our marriage and we start living for ourselves, and we expect our marriage to fulfill desires and needs and wants within us that marriage was never intended to fulfill. And that will lead to disappointment, disillusionment, sooner or later unforgiveness, resentment, bitterness, all of these things. God did not intend for your spouse to meet every one of your needs. If they could, you would leave your relationship with God and you would just find total fulfillment in each other. So God says, I want you to walk in a place where you participate daily in what He calls the ministry of reconciliation, where you're going to fight, you're going to have problems, and I want you to show the world what my love looks like by keeping no record of wrong, by being patient with each other, by being kind to each other, by not allowing unforgiveness or bitterness to take root in your heart, to not let the sun go down on your anger, lest the devil get a foothold. It's when we don't deal with our problems and fight right that the devil has an opportunity to have some fun. And some people will say, you know what, I just fell out of love. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. That's not something you fall out of. You don't wake up, you don't live this day passionately in love with your spouse and tomorrow wake up and say, wow, I don't know what happened, but the love's gone, y'all. It just doesn't happen that way. It is a slow progression of not dealing with anger, not dealing with unforgiveness, not dealing with bitterness, letting that fire get dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, and then all of a sudden your heart is just full of resentment toward that other person, and you'd rather leave than go through the hard work of finding reconciliation. Listen, God says love your enemies. So if we can love our enemies, I promise you, you can love that gift of a spouse that God has given you. But it's not always easy, and sometimes we fight. And we're supposed to. It's part of being a disciple and learning to deal with things in the right way. And that's what we're going to read about today. So join me in the Song of Solomon as we all get some hope today, because we all fight, right? Just say right. We all fight, right? Absolutely. Some of us fight right. Some of us don't fight right. Now, I'll tell you, your worship pastor, Mark Cunningham, he knows how to fight. I went to his house and I saw they had gotten into an argument, him and Kelly was on the floor on her hands and knees. And she crawled over to the bed and said, "Get out from under the bed, son, and fight like a man." Chapter 5. Let's look at this. Here, let me set this up for you. We're going to start in verse number 2, Song of Solomon, chapter 5. Now, here's the deal. Her husband, they dated, they were attracted, they got married, they had their wedding night, they've been intimate, it's been awesome. Here comes the first big fight, y'all. The honeymoon stage has left, and here comes the conflict. Let me set this up. The husband's been working late at night. He's been spending a lot of extra time at work. So the bride decides she's just going to have a me night. She's going to pamper herself, so she's gotten in a nice long Calgon bubble bath. She's feeling good. She's put on all her nice lotions and perfume. She's got on her nice comfortable nightgown. She's feeling clean. She's feeling pretty. She's feeling relaxed. She's like, "Oh, I'm just going to lay in this bed and I'm just going to have a great night's sleep." Well, all of a sudden, he comes home a little early. He says, baby, I'm ready to play." Look what happens to the drama. Starting with verse 2, this is the bride speaking. "I slept, but my heart was awake. Listen, my lover is knocking." Here she was laying in bed, just wanting some girl time. And all of a sudden, her lover comes knocking. "Open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my flawless one." Now, wives, when your husband starts talking like that, you know what he's talking about, right? Sometimes it just means, "Oh, baby, my darling, my dove, my flawless one." And he says, "My head is drenched with dew, my hair with the dampness of the night." In other words, he says, "Baby, I've been working hard. I'm sweaty. My hand smells like gasoline and oil. But you know what? Daddy's home and Daddy want to play." And she responds, "You know what? I've taken my robe off. Do I have to put it on again? I've washed my feet. Must I soil them again?" In other words, "Baby, I have a headache." And this is when she messed up. Here's what happened. He says, my lover, and there's some debate over what exactly it means. He says, "My lover thrust his hand through the door." And we don't really know. Does this mean he was angry and just pushed the door and left? Or did he start to come in and just decide, "Oh, he got rejected," and so he leaves. But let's read her response to this. It says, "My lover thrust his hand through the latch opening." And then it says, "And then my heart began to pound for him." So in other words, she had a change of heart. She was like, "Babe, I just got comfortable. You know, do I have to get dirty again?" And then her heart changes. And she's, "Oh, my heart leapt for him. My heart began to pound for him." So she got up, rose to open the door for her lover, her hands dripping with myrrh, fingers with flowing myrrh. She's got all her perfume and lotions on the handles of the lock. She opened the door, but her lover had left. He was gone, and her heart sank at his departure. "I looked for him, but did not find him. I called him, but he did not answer." So here's what happened. Why do we have this conflict? Ladies, let me just tell you something about us men. Our egos are very shallow. We're weak. We're weak. There's two things that you may have heard me talk about before. Two ingredients for a lasting marriage. Now, I studied a gentleman who gave his whole life to this book, Song of Solomon. He was a pastor named Tommy Nelson, and he's known as like a marriage guru. He said his whole life he never read another marriage book. He never went to marriage conferences. He committed to memorize this book right here. He says Song of Solomon will tell you everything you need to know. But there's a great book out there called Love and Respect. And the pastor said there's only 2 ingredients you need for a lasting marriage. Unconditional love, unconditional respect. Because men, you may have learned by now, women speak the language of love. And just like we've been reading in Song of Solomon, they need to hear words of tenderness and compassion. They want to know that they are a beauty that you are still willing to fight for and pursue. And women feed off of love and tenderness and compassion. We don't speak that naturally, so God says in Ephesians 5, husbands, love your wives unconditionally. Don't ever withdraw or withhold that compassion. Now, women, you need to understand something about us men. We don't naturally speak the language of love. We naturally speak the language of respect. This is big to us. You ask a man, what's more important? You want your coworkers to love you or respect you? Every time it's about respect. And yet women don't always understand the importance of this. And men, we get this about each other. You don't ever disrespect another man unless you want to fight. And we don't cross that line. Women don't always see that line. And what happens is when a man feels disrespected, we make the mistake of shutting off the love. And we withdraw and we get distant and we get quiet and we get cold. Women, on the other hand, they crave love, and when they feel unloved, their natural tendency is to be disrespectful. Not always being mean, but just mashing those buttons because you want a response. You're not loving me. What's your problem? What's going on? Talk to me. And they show disrespect. Well, you see the cycle that can create. A man feels disrespected, he withholds love. A woman feels unloved, she's disrespectful. And God says, wives, respect your husbands unconditionally. God never says, wives, love your husbands. Why? You do that naturally. God never says, husbands, respect your wives. Why? We do that naturally. God says, husbands, love your wives. Don't ever turn it off. Wives, respect your husbands, even when they act like a big old jerk. Don't ever turn it off. And the opposite cycle is true. Wives, if you'll speak words of respect and admiration to your husband, they will want to love you. And husbands, if you will show tenderness and compassion to your wives, they will respect you. And so when we're doing this mutually together, that's when marriage is beautiful and intimate. But when one of those gets shut off, that's when we have tension and conflict. And here is a man that came home feeling like a good provider, feeling like he's been working hard, taking care of his bride. He says, baby, daddy's home, and I want to be with you. And she says, not tonight. And he feels put down, he feels rejected, and he leaves. Another thing that we do, men, God created us men of strength and boldness and courage. And when we revert back to our sinful, fallen nature, it comes out in one of 2 ways. Either we overuse that capacity and we become forceful, or we underuse that capacity and we become passive. Like, if it's about winning or losing, I promise you, you can win an argument with enough force. If all you want to do is win, just get you an AK-47 and say, let me make my point very clear. You'll win every time. Now, you'll kill your marriage and relationship, but you'll win the argument. And so men, we can be forceful, we can get loud, sometimes violent, and that is outside of God's design. Or this may be his deal. This is like my deal. I very seldom get loud and abusive. I will pass. I'll shut down. If I feel disrespected or we're just not at a good place, I'll say, you know what? I'm just going to focus on work and we'll talk later. And I'll just kind of get passive. I'll shut down and I'll just do my own thing. And that's not God's design either. Either one of those will lead to a wounded marriage where anger builds and resentment builds and unforgiveness builds. Kind of a funny story. I heard about a couple that were giving each other the silent treatment. Anybody ever given each other the silent treatment? You know what I'm talking about? Where you're like, you refuse to be the one to speak first. You know what I'm saying? The crazy thing about the silent treatment is the whole time there's nothing you want more than to talk and communicate, but by God, that pride inside of you says, it ain't going to be me. I am not giving in first. So one couple were fighting, and they were giving each other the silent treatment. And so the husband was mad. He's like, I am not going to give in to this. He just stormed off the bed, but he had to catch a flight at 5 o'clock in the morning and needed his wife to wake him up. So what he did is he wrote a note that says, I have to catch a flight. I need up at 5 a.m. Wake me up. And stuck it on her pillow, went to bed, went to sleep. So that's it. He woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning, missed his flight. He was furious. He rolled over to give her some what for, and his head rolled across the note on the pillow that said, it's 5 a.m. Wake up. Listen, all these ways we go about fighting, it's because of our brokenness and pride. And God is saying, let's fight right. Don't get forceful. Don't be passive. Don't be angry. You are together in unity. It's not about winning or losing. It's about unity. You're on the same team. Many times I've heard Bill Edwards say, he comes from the business world where it's about winning and losing. You go to the negotiation table, the boardroom, it's about winning. He said coming to church and being a part of Heritage, he realized it's not about winning anymore. It's about protecting the unity of this body. You can be right and win an argument and kill relationships. Or you can be humble and say, you know what, there's something more important than me getting my way. Something more important than my preference ruling the day. And that is unity in marriage. Some of you have won some arguments and hurt your relationship. I ask you to raise the value of unity and practice the ministry of reconciliation. What happens? How do we do that? Let's look at this final passage to get some good insight. Skip on over to chapter 6, the first couple of verses. Look at what it says. He left, and now her friends have showed up and said, baby girl, where did your man go? They said, where has your lover gone, most beautiful of women? Which way did your lover turn that we may look for him with you? Look at her response. She says, I know exactly where he is. My lover has gone down to his garden, to the beds of spices, to browse in the gardens and to gather lilies. I am my lover's, and my lover is mine. He browses among the lilies. And you know what happens after that? They come back together, and it's the dating talk again. It's the wedding night talk again. Words of love and tenderness and compassion. Baby, you're the most beautiful thing God's ever given me. I'm so thankful for you. What is the lesson to learn here, y'all? He had a place. He had a place to go to when the fighting began. We need a place. Some of us go to the wrong place. When you begin arguing with your spouse, do not go to your friends that are going to say things like, oh, I would not take that. You don't have to put up with that mess. You know what you need to say? You know what you need to do? Run from that place. You do not need to go to a place that's going to ignite anger, ignite frustration. You need to go to the place where you're going to meet God and say, God, I am angry, I'm hurt, I'm wounded, I need you to change my heart. And I think he went to his garden. That was his place where he could meet God and say, God, change my heart. I'm hurt right now, I'm angry right now, I don't want to say the things that are in my heart. And she knew he's in his place, and when he comes back, there's going to be the ministry of reconciliation. She knew. What did she say? He's in his garden, and I am my lover's, and he is mine. She knew when he returns, there's going to be tenderness. She knew she messed up. I rejected him. I said the wrong thing, but I know where he is. He goes to his place, and he meets God, and when he comes back, there's going to be reassurance. Men, women too, don't ever come back with words of anger, with words of divorce. Is that how it's going to be? Words of resentment, words of unforgiveness. Your spouse needs to know when you return, there's going to be reconciliation. There's going to be reassurance. There's going to be forgiveness. You've got to find your place. It may be alone in your room with a worship music playing and just saying, God, I don't feel it, I don't like it, but change my heart. Change my heart, God. It may be alone in your closet where you just crying. If you need to go outside, listen, I got to do some yard work, y'all. I got to get alone where I can say, God, change my heart. I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm frustrated. God, change my heart. Change my heart. Don't let me speak these words. Don't let me speak death. Don't let me cause destruction. You need to practice this with your kids. Practice this with your friends, your loved ones, especially your bride and your groom. Practice this. Find your place where God melts your heart. And she knows and he knows when we come back together, I am my lover's and he is mine. I am my lover's and she is mine. And we're going to pick up where we left off and we're going to speak words of life to each other. Our video creative team got together over the last few weeks and they made a video to capture the moment in a couple's life. And I just want you to sit back for a few minutes and just be inspired by this video. Check this out.
The shed, right?
Yeah, it should be. It could be in the back closet.
Most couples get derailed, they get disordered, they do not know what to do, they get stuck and they settle for it. One of the things that Jane and I have had to learn to do, and we're glad that we've learned to do this, is that we've learned how to forgive each other. I cancel anything that comes up on her side of the relationship, but the natural part of me wants to get angry with her. The natural part of me really wants to say something mean to her.
So you're saying we just ignore the problem?
No, he's saying to involve God. Are you even listening?
God's not the one that accused me. God's not the one that made me feel this way.
I think we need to take a break.
Okay, we'll take a break.
Could I get you anything else?
No, we're fine, thank you.
What did they say?
They tell me to give my hurt up to God. And I'm trying to forgive. But then we get into arguments, and my home has become my own personal hell.
But it's only just a few more days left in the program, at least.
I've already taken the job.
That job is almost 200 miles away.
239 miles away, and every mile away is to a new me, a better me.
Jason, man, don't do this. At least give it.
You're not listening to me. I've already taken the job.
When do you start?
3 weeks, but I've got to pack.
But then go ahead on and pack. But you don't know what could happen in 3 weeks.
Yes, I do. My life's going to be for the better in 3 weeks.
What if better means with help?
And what if it doesn't?
Jason, I don't want it to end this way. Jason. Jason.
Here I am with all my plans, watching them slip through my hands. When I return, will I come home? Is it a mistake out on my own? If I return, will I find home? It's a mistake out on my own.
Oh, God. God, please do something. Please do something.
Call my name, say follow me. You'll be changed.
Jason, maybe it's time for you to stop fighting with your
Call
wife
my name,
and start fighting for your wife.
say follow me. You'll be changed.
Listen, y'all. We all fight. We all fight. We show God's love best when we practice the ministry of reconciliation. The goal is not to fight. The goal is not to stop fighting. That's part of relationship. The goal is to give Christ great glory in the way we fight. And when the world sees us covering each other with mercy and forgiveness and grace, God gets glory. And when we speak words of life and tenderness, God gets glory. Now, I understand many are here who've walked through this, and you've walked through divorce and abuse and great pain. And I just pray for you today that God's mercy and grace wash over you. You've been burned by this, and I pray for healing to happen in your heart today. But for those of you still in marriage, I pray that today you be inspired to find your place where healing is done. And I want to take just 2 minutes now, and if you're here with your spouse today, will you take the next, I invite you if you want to come pray together, great, or pray with one of our intercessors on the side. But would you take the next 2 minutes and look at each other and just speak words of life, blessing. I love you. I appreciate you. I'm thankful for you. God's just gonna, Mark's just gonna sing over us, and I just invite you, speak words of life for each other just for a couple of minutes. Do this
Jesus
together.
at the center of it all. Jesus at the center of it all. From beginning to the end, it will always be, it's always been you, Jesus. Jesus, nothing else matters. Nothing in this world will do. Jesus, you're the center. Everything revolves around you, all around you. Nothing else matters. Nothing in this world will do.
just a minute, everybody. Now let's all turn our affection and our hearts up to God and just allow His ministry of reconciliation to wash over us, where we have been the one causing the burns and the pain and the disappointment and the hurt. Let's just commit afresh to Him and just invite God to wash over us today. Let's worship the name of Jesus just for a minute together.
Jesus at the center of my life. Jesus at the center of my life. From beginning to the end, you will always be. It's always been you, Jesus.
For every marriage here, Father God, I pray you protect them. I pray where there has been bitterness and anger and resentment, God, heal us today. Heal us today. May we stop fighting against each other and with each other. May we fight for each other. May we value unity over being right. God, I pray for your Spirit to allow the ministry of reconciliation to flow freely in our homes. God, help us find our place where we meet you and encounter you and carry our burdens to you, where you will soften our hearts and soften our words so that we can always speak life to each other. Protect every marriage here. For those that have been burned by this, no longer married or separated, I pray for healing, God. Healing, God. Undo the pain. Undo the wounds. Let your grace flow. Your mercy, your forgiveness flow. I pray for those wounds to be healed. For lives to be restored. In Jesus' name, amen.